Butterfield! He's been threatening that recently, and all the Burnley players run to the Darwin end.
Burnley win the next ball. It's Rory now. On the outside, decent.
Barnes! He got it! Ashley Barnes with it! What a cross from Rory! And there was Ashley Barnes! And Burnley leading the derby.
Obviously quickly finds Benson in space at the byline. Can Burnley get a goal here? Back for Brownell. Saved by the keeper.
Burnley won it to the end. That is magnificent. They deserve that.
On it by Fulton Teller. On for a hat-trick.
He's got it. Hat-trick for Nathan Teller. Oh, he's on fire at the minute. 3-0 Burnley. It's Nathan Teller's day. And Burnley are 3 up here. Fantastic derby.
Here's Benson. Can he go on the outside? Comes inside. Top
Shot! Oh, the goal! Manuel Benson once more! That is top class! Burnley have done it! Fantastic! The Clarets deserve the championship title. They've been the best side throughout the campaign. Burnley have won the second tier. What a fantastic achievement. The players have been magnificent.
Hello everyone and welcome along to the latest instalment of the Turfcast podcast pre-game show with me, Joe Rubin, head of Burnley's trip to Old Trafford this weekend to take on Manchester United. Always a cracking place to go. I know United have fallen on difficult times compared to what they were like in the 90s, but Old Trafford is still one of my favourite grounds in this country and I am very much looking forward to going. Burnley obviously managed to get a win at the weekend. Manchester United still without a win so far in the Premier League so far this season, so Burnley do go into this game above United in the league. Let's not get carried away though. It's only the third game of the season. I'm pleased to introduce Callum from the United Road, who's a big United fan, obviously. How you doing, mate?
I'll do. It's nice to be back. It's been a while since we were last there, considering you weren't in the league last year. But yeah, nice to be back on.
Yeah. Obviously, the relegation. I think we ended up. Did we get a positive result against you at the Turf after that one? I think we did. I think he's 1-1
or 1-1.
Yeah, I think
it was 1-1. I think.
Yeah. But anyway, obviously, less of what happened in the past. Talk to me about Man United. Then talk about your start to the season, because I know it's only been 2 games to be fair, but obviously without a win. Did play well against Arsenal, to be fair, though. Quite unfortunate to leave Old Trafford with a defeat against Arsenal, like I said. However, the performance didn't really carry on into the Fulham game, and obviously you drew 1-1 at Craven Cottage this weekend. But what were your thoughts on United's start to the season so far, mate?
I think it very much echoed what was last season, really. I don't think we did bad against the bigger teams last year. You saw it against the likes of Liverpool and stuff. I think we played really very much okay. The issue is, it was the teams, the likes of Fulham, all those kind of teams where we struggled. We ended up drawing and losing those games, hence why we ended up in 15th in the league, I think it was, and very nearly in 16th, 17th. And the positivity around the Arsenal game, yes, we lost, but I think there was a lot of encouraging signs. Yeah. But to me, it was still sort of an echo of last season. There was encouraging signs every now and then against the bigger sides, but we'd then go play the likes of the teams that you'd expect to see in the bottom half of the table, and they'd wipe the floor with us, or we'd just be so lacklustre.
Yeah, we'll obviously touch on last season briefly then, because obviously it's very strange to see Man United down. You are correct, you were down in 15th. However, it was a win on the final day of the season that did get you up to 15th, where you leapfrogged Wolves. And you did finish on 42 points. Never in any danger of going down, really. Maybe as a United fan, you were looking over your shoulder a little bit nervously. I'm not sure, you'll have to expand on that. But I never really felt you were in any danger of going down. Same with Spurs. And maybe I just feel like you're both too big to get relegated. But talk about last season. It must have been frustrating, and especially for fans of our age who saw United very, very, very successful in the 90s and early 2000s.
Do you know what? I mean, last season was just dreadful in every way. And you say we were never going to get relegated, but it wasn't United that were the reason why we didn't get relegated. Unfortunately, the gulf between the Premier League and the Championship has kind of grown significantly over the last probably 3, 4, maybe 5 years. And I think we're starting to see that. I mean, the last couple of seasons, I think it's been a case where all 6 promoted teams have gone straight back down.
Yeah, obviously we were one of them the season before.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't actually think that'll be the case this season. I think Leeds may go down, but in terms of Burnley and Sunderland, I think you might just have enough. But that's why we didn't get relegated. And the thing is, it's too big to go down. They said that in the 70s and we got relegated. And I think Spurs fans are probably particularly annoyed at the minute just because of the lack of ambition from the chairman and things where they've just not kicked on from the Europa League win. But United haven't they've probably addressed the attacking problems, but ultimately the midfield is still dire. And then there's all this talk about Mainu potentially being sold, and the goalkeeping situation is still a mess. It feels like a very much an echo of our last video that me and you did, where it was just United were in a mess. We were struggling. We couldn't do this. We couldn't do that. And it's just like, what's actually moved on here? It doesn't seem to be the case. And last season was dreadful in just so many ways. Yes, we started the season with Ten Hag, but Ten Hag, in hindsight, probably should have been sacked after the FA Cup win. The fact that he was allowed to keep his job based on an FA Cup win said to me it was very much a nostalgic reason to keep him, when the whole picture should have been a part of. His signings weren't good enough. We finished 8th in the league then, so the writing was kind of on the wall. And then we gave him a load of money to sign a lot of players that now probably don't fit a system for Rubin Amorim, who is now in essence struggling because, one, the style that he wants to implement is nowhere near what the players can do. And two, he's, I think, 29 Premier League games and he'd be in the equivalent of 28 points. That is relegation form. There's no way of dressing that up. That is relegation form. And if that was the case of over a season, what's that? I think on average that ends up about 35 points. That is a relegation total probably 60-70% of the time throughout the Premier League era. It's just not much is changing. And the thing is, with the Mainu situation at the moment and the performance against Fulham, has much changed. He needed to kick on, especially with the attacking reinforcements. Yes, there's more's needed, but you can't tell me that squad is 15th in the league. It just isn't. He has to be doing better with what he had, and unfortunately he didn't. And the basics that he's given us so far suggests to me that, yes, you are going to back your Mainus because they come from the academy and they are talent that I've seen for a long time in the academy. The manager's got to give you something to back. You can't just blindly... you'll blindly back him to an extent, but when it's happening over the likes of Mainu and some of the players in the academy that aren't getting a sniff, you start to wonder, well, what can we back? Because we're not seeing anything to back at the moment, and it's frustrating when we are going to the likes of Burnley this week, or playing Burnley this weekend and Fulham, and not going, we should be winning that game, no problem. We're still like, it depends what's going to happen. It depends what team turns up. It's not what we should be about, and it's frustrating that we're still here. It feels like some of these decisions are just hanging over us, and it's not right.
I'm glad you've mentioned Amorim, because I did want to talk to you about him. I think you are right. It's 28 or 27 points in 29 games, which ultimately you said will end you around 35 points. I think thankfully for you guys, for the last 2-3 seasons, that will be enough to keep you up. Leicester City were the best relegation side last year with 25 points, so you'd have been comfortable. But what's the general consensus among fans then with Amorim? Because it feels to me like last season, like I know you've touched on it briefly there, he didn't start the season, admittedly. He came in, I don't remember when it was, just before halfway, I think it was. And then there was always excuses like, well, let him get a pre-season under his belt, let him have a proper summer. And I know we're only 2 games in, so I don't know if I'm overreacting, but it doesn't feel like he's kicked on a little bit. So what's the general consensus? Are fans now starting to get a little bit frustrated with him?
I think so, yeah. I mean, it's hard to kind of give a consensus to the wider fan base because, look, ultimately, I don't speak for everyone, but it seems like there isn't a consensus. It seems like there's very much a divide, and I think the divide has probably grown because of the Mainu situation over the past couple of days. Yeah. There was some journalists that were reporting the news, and I think because of the reputation of said journalists, people weren't taking it so seriously. For then Ornstein to come out this morning and say, actually, guys, it actually could be the case. He is exploring his options. Whether it is completely true or not, whether it's agent's fault, we don't know. But when you see in the likes of, your Ugarte is coming on and, with 5 minutes left, he's bringing 2 centre-backs on, it does make you question in-game management. It makes you question player decisions. And you can't tell me Ugarte would have done a better job than Mainu. And I think with the talent that he's got, I think it's growing that divide. I mean, one thing I would say is, look, he's clearly a talented coach. And I know I alluded to it earlier, but he's got to do better with what he's got. And I know situations can differ, but you look at Thomas Frank at Tottenham. No, yes, look, again, you've got to really make the point that he's only 2 games in, but there's other managers. Arne Slot came in with Chiesa as his signing last season.
Yeah.
He won the league. Like, there's Thomas Frank, there's Oliver Glasner at Palace. Like, all these managers came in and implemented something that worked with the players, worked with his style, and ultimately look at how good these clubs have got it now. You know, Palace won the first ever trophy. Spurs look flying under Frank at the moment, even though that there's so many fans that are really questioning the ambition of the wider club. You know, Arne Slot won the second league title for Liverpool in 30-something years. Like, why is the excuse always he's got to have his own players, he's got to give him time? Like, he's got to be able to improve what he's got. And again, when we weren't the 15th best team, you know, you look at the quality that those players have. It was either lack of effort from the players, it was either bad coaching, it was either completely unable to adapt to his methods. I don't know, but hiring a manager who wanted 3 at the back, but then having a squad that was nowhere near the level to be able to do so. It's just, there's so many questions that you can ask about it, but still not 15th in the league. It's still not playing like that against Tottenham in the Europa League final. Like, there's so much to question, and after this amount of time now, you've got to think that he's got to do better. He's got to, because you can't. There's only so much credit you can have in the bank, and then when you have a pre-season and go into the next season where it's kind of a clean slate for some people, and then your best academy product isn't getting any minutes over players that simply just aren't good enough for Man United. And I'm sorry to say that about Ugarte, and I think he has his uses maybe as a squad player if need be, but we're spending 50+ million on these players, and they're coming in and looking completely out of the depth almost immediately, just, you know, at the cost of an academy product who was man of the match in an FA Cup final, who, you know, has already got 10 England senior caps. It makes you question his decisions. And I'll always back a manager, I really will, but you can't just blindly back someone because of who they are. They have to give you something there to actually hold on to. And the start of the season is really starting to actually make me think, is this long term, or is he just going to struggle? Because, like I say, he's a talented coach. He very clearly his time at Sporting, but it's just not happening here at the moment, is it? And it might change, but nothing's suggesting to me that it will.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And obviously, I do agree with you in terms of Amorim. I would have expected to see more from him. But is it not the problems at Man United just run deeper than the manager? Obviously, Amorim's come in, struggled. Ten Hag, all right, got the FA Cup win, but struggled. Rangnick, again, he had a lot to say about the situation at United, struggled. I know Solskjaer did all right when you look back at the Ten Hag and Amorim now, but at the time it was, you know, painted that he was struggling. So what are the issues, do you think, at United? Do you think it's quite a lot of different things, or do you think it's the Glazers and Ineos just getting a lot of things wrong all the time?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, really. Look, the elephant in the room is they are still at the club and they are still largely ignored. And I think what people do seem to sometimes need to realise is Ineos have come in, they've invested their own money, which is something we were crying out for 20 years.
Yeah.
You know, something that wasn't done for 20 years. They've come in, invested their own money, they've implemented a footballing structure and a footballing operation that wasn't to be seen probably since Fergie, and that was only because of Fergie's genius that he was able to implement that sort of thing as a sort of leader throughout the club, which nowadays in football you just don't see, regardless across the footballing spectrum. So it's good to see those changes, but ultimately the Glazers are still there, and there are still very, very much some financial struggles at the club where, yes, we spent this money on these players, but Man United should be able to do that anyway. And I think probably the redundancies on a human level obviously weren't good, but maybe were needed, I guess. From being outside the club and not within the club, I don't know how that's sort of operating currently. I don't know if morale's changed or anything, but it from the message seemed to be that it was very much needed from a financial and just operationally standpoint. They are still there, and there is still that element of toxicity. And I think whatever anger you have at the club, Ineos aren't perfect, but you can't always directly blame at them. At least they're kind of trying. At least they're trying to implement a change that is needed. The Glazers will always need to have anger directed at them because of what they've done and the damage they've done to the club over 2 decades. And I don't think that should ever go away until they leave. When they leave, I don't know. If they leave, I don't know. Obviously, I know that they are able to now sell the club, because I think there was a period where they weren't able to with the whole ins and outs of it. I'm not 100% sure, and then you've got I think that the whole be all and end all is the Glazers are still at the club and there are still very much toxicity surrounding them. Ineos have tried to implement this structure and help and improve the club. They've made mistakes, obviously, with Dan Ashworth. Ten Hag was a major mistake keeping him. Will Rubin Amorim prove to be another one? We don't know yet. I'll back him, but he's making it hard to look at a long-term view at the moment because of everything that's going on. There's no improvement and other sort of ins and outs in terms of the academy products that aren't getting any time. But every issue at the club can always go back to them, and it always will go back to them. And I know a lot of rival clubs can turn around and go, "Oh, you're just blaming the Glazers." People need to understand the context and the genuine damage they've actually done to the club. You look at the stadium, you look at the finances, you look at the general nature around the club, the morale around the club. It all stems from their leadership and the people that they put in charge, like the Ed Woodwards, the Richard Arnolds, the John Murtos, Avram Glazer, them all being there. It's just a cloud that'll hang over Old Trafford, and I think it always will do whilst they're there. And unfortunately, with Ineos being associated with them, anger gets directed at them.
Yeah,
but ultimately they're trying, and they are trying, and they've got things wrong, but I don't think the club was ever for sale, and I think Ineos got into the club whatever way they could with hopefully a long-term view to be able to get rid of them entirely. When that happens, I don't know.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's just go back to this Manu situation then, because I'll be honest with you, I didn't know much about that, and then when you've mentioned it, then I've tried to quickly do some searches while you were talking. Seems a little bit of a strange one. You said he's not got any minutes yet. Obviously, I remember the last season, I think it was the season before, he was like the best thing since sliced bread, and he came onto the scene, and I thought, this guy is a player. What's gone on then? Does he just not fit Amorim's system? Does that says more about Amorim than it does about Manu, though?
I mean, I said a bit before about the consensus in terms of the club's view, the club's fan base's view of Amorim. I think you can largely see the divide solely on Kobbie Mainoo. My view is, if your project and your style can't include a player of Kobbie Mainoo's capabilities from the academy, for me, your project and style isn't worth waiting for. If you can't implement and get him into that setup, then for me, that's a failing in itself. Like I said before, multiple senior England caps at under 20, FA Cup final goal. It's, saved the club on a few times in last minutes. I just struggle to understand how you can back a style that has given us 28 points in 29 games over an academy product who is as clearly widely lauded as he is. This isn't just somebody from the academy who's a bit good. Paul Scholes has said he was 10 times the player he was at that age. That praise is massive. And for me, Kobbie Mainoo and the academy in general embodies what Man United is. It just does. Everything. We've had an academy product in the lineup since 1937. For the first time since records began, an academy product hasn't had any minutes. That is a failing in itself, regardless of whether that's from the manager or above. If you can't implement a product from the academy of Man United's sort of capability, that is a huge failing. One in your style, one in your project, and it's a project that a lot of fans will probably struggle to buy into if that is what you think it is, because you're kind of going against the club's ingrained culture, and it's a major issue that for me, and especially of Mainoo's talent. The guy is a very, very, very good footballer, and if there's anything to sort of suggest that there are clubs in for him, it seems that reports are suggesting that top clubs all around Europe are after him. Again, that suggests how good he is. I can't back an idea that can't implement a player of that capability into a setup. It says to me your project isn't worth buying into. And the last year has kind of suggested, why should we back that? Because it's clearly not been good enough so far. You've got to give us a basic. You've got to give us a basis to kind of go, actually, well, we've seen this and we've seen that. I understand the defence is a bit better. You're seeing like the likes of Dorgu starting to improve, Aiden Heaven. But is it enough to start going, oh, okay, we'll sell him for this? Get this down the back in your manager. But sometimes you need to go, well, hang on a minute. What are we backing here?
Yeah, I do tend to agree. I think it's ridiculous that Mainoo is being frozen out, forced out, if you will. But like you said, he's a very good player, and that's obviously why a lot of top clubs are looking at him from Europe. But let's focus more towards the actual game this weekend now, then, rather than the United issues. Obviously, you brought in some new players over the summer, the likes of Cunha. You've obviously got Buemo as well. How are you expected to see United line up? How have we been lining up in the last couple of games?
Well, it's weird, really, because obviously we brought in Šeško, however you say it.
Oh, yeah, Šeško.
Yeah, we brought him in as well, and he's not started the first 2 games. It's looked like he's kind of done a bit of a rotating sort of front 3, 4, I suppose, if you will, with the likes of Mount playing up there. And I think it's just because of the timing of when Šeško came in, but I think Burnley are probably more physical team, especially coming up from the Championship. They'll try and use that. They're quite a well-drilled defensive team with under Scott Parker as well. So it'll be a tough game for Šeško, but I'd like to think he'll be brought in for his full debut instead of bringing him off from the bench. So I think that front 3 would probably pick itself in terms of Šeško at top and then Cunha and Buemo behind. But going back to Mainu and all that issue, who do we start in the 8 in the 2 sort of positions behind there? Because Bruno's best position is also a 10.
Yeah,
you'd argue probably Mainu's is. Ugarte just doesn't seem to be working. Casemiro hasn't got the legs. It's just, what are we doing? Like we've addressed the attacking issues without addressing the build up to the attack, and then you go further back and look. We're starting Bayindir in goal, who, I'm sorry to say, he's just really not good enough, is he? And I know our other goalkeeper, Andre Onana, isn't good enough, but
don't forget Tom Eaton. Stick Tom Eaton in the net, mate.
Obviously Tom Eaton's got a big affiliation to Burnley as well. I feel for Tom Eaton though, because I think Tom Eaton is very much retired. He's
there.
But he's very much. I think he's very much there on a homegrown quota basis, and he's a coach. He's kind of that third keeper in name only. So for me, I'd probably still start him over them two anyway. But my point is, it'd be very hard for him to start. Again, Burnley are a physical team. It'll just be another corner, surround the goalkeeper, and then weak hand. It's frustrating. And I think the defence, again, probably picks itself. I think that's fine. But do you start Diallo or Dallo at right back? For me, Ahmad, I think maybe his best position is a 10. We're loaded with quality up front without the sort of basics behind to actually help create those chances. And it's just really tough to even. I sometimes question, does Amorim actually know his best 11 at the moment? It seems like there's so many players there that shouldn't be, and because of the financial challenges, we can't push it on because we're having to rely on sales. But because of attitude and just everything else around it, of sort of how we've basically gone, oh, these are the bomb squad, we don't want these. Well, we've kind of forced our hand there and shown the world, oh, well, if you don't want them, we'll just wait until as late as possible to get them as cheap as possible, or you're going to have them stuck in your squad, which then means we're financially hindered to buy any more players. It's just a bit of a faff, to be honest, and frustratingly, it's an echo of the failings of the previous regimes, really.
Yeah, earlier in the pod, you did say sort of like you do well against the teams in the top half of the table, but tend to struggle against the teams in the lower half of the table. Burnley very much fall into that second category. Is this the sort of game then that does kind of worry you? Not worry you because you're scared of Burnley's quality or anything like that, but worry you because you struggled against teams like Burnley over the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, it's weird, really. It's like it's a worry because of our own problems, not because of anyone else. I mean, look, we still lost the game against Arsenal. We still didn't win all these games last year against the bigger teams. Obviously, I think we drew 2-2 against Liverpool. I think we beat City 2-1. Like, we did okay against these teams, but ultimately we still, I think our record against them is still worse than it was better off the top of my head. I could actually be wrong on that, but I'm not particularly familiar that is absolutely brilliant. I just know we played better, probably similar against Arsenal. We didn't play terribly. We played okay, but I suggest we played better against Arsenal than we did against Fulham. And again, it's like I say, it's an absolute echo of last year. We were struggling against those teams. They're the teams that we should be beating to climb the table. And then the games against your Arsenals, Liverpool, Cities, Chelsea's, Tottenham's, Newcastle's, Villa's, I suppose now, they're the games that you'd be like, oh, I don't know if I'll win, but we need to be at our best to go and win it. They're the ones that get you right at the top. The ones that get you floating around that area, the ones against your Burnleys, your Fulhams, your Evertons, your I don't know who else, your Sunderland's, Leeds, all that. They're the teams that you have to be beating to get up there. 1-1 against Fulham, in hindsight, it's got to be better. And Burnley very much fall under that category. And to be honest, it's like I say last time, I think it was 1-1 after our last preview. Burnley have been a bit of an annoying team for us in recent years. That we've not always beat them. It's always been a scrappy 1-0 or a 1-1 or user beating us 1-0. It's never been United battered them and dominated the game. It was always oh God, it's always a bit of a tough place to go there. So I know you're usually coming to Old Trafford, but I think not worried because of you guys, although you do have your own merits and things. I just think it's a worry in general, just because of how United are. And again, we don't know what United are going to turn up.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Obviously, we did win 2-0 at Old Trafford. I can't remember what year it was now. But obviously, Chris Wood and Jay Rodriguez were the goals. I was actually in the Stretford end for that. So that was amazing but frustrating at the same time.
Good way to admit that an away fan is in the home end again from Man United.
Yeah, well, we have the similar issues, mate. Again, owners just selling tickets and not really caring who they go to, but we won't go into that too much. But that leads me on nicely to predictions then, mate. Obviously, you've struggled so far this season, yet to get a win, but without criticising my own team and my own squad, United fans and players and management and owners will all be looking at this and thinking perfect chance to get the first win of the season. How are you thinking it's going to pan out?
Yeah, I think it's got to be. I think there'll be major issues if this isn't a win at home at Old Trafford to Burnley, newly promoted team. I think the quality there probably is the gulf there. The fans will get behind United as always. I'd go with my heart over my head, but my head would have to agree that we'd win as well, just because of so many different reasons. I think United are looking at maybe a 2-0, I'd go with. To be honest, anything short of that would be a bit of a failing. It needs to be not only a win, but a convincing performance as well. Because 28 points in 29 games is nowhere near good enough. It's nowhere near good enough for probably Burnley, because that's when you start teetering on relegation kind of thing. And the teams at that end would be like, should we be making changes? If it keeps up for much longer, I don't know how much time in the bank is going to be left for him. It's not about results, it's about performance as well, and showing that the reason we've hired him is his style can work. If we can't go and do it against Burnley, no disrespect to Burnley, but my point is a promoted team coming to Old Trafford, third game of the season, who've kind of one loss, one win, kind of maybe expected, maybe a draw against Sunderland would have been expected as well. If United can't show that performance-wise and results-wise, we can't convincingly beat the likes of the promoted teams, that's when a major problem starts to suffice. And Burnley's the first one of the season where that's got to happen, especially at home.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with your thinking behind it. You've obviously got to get a win at some point, and you're going to be looking at a newly promoted side to get that win. I'm probably going to go with my heart over my head, if I'm being honest with you. We've got the win under the belt. I'm hoping we'll go into it with a bit of confidence. I'd be very surprised if we went there and turned you over again. When we did that, we were a lot better than what we are now. But I do feel like we might be able to nick a draw. So I'm going to predict a 1-1, but I won't be putting it on a coupon, mate.
That's my genuine worry. I think if you've got a result, that's what you could do. You could nick a draw or a 1-0, or again a 1-0 because of a corner or something like that. And I know obviously it's been a long time since the Fergie era, but growing up in that era, it still blows my mind that there's so many of us fans now who are just sort of susceptible to going, oh well, this could actually happen. It's just horrible to still think after all these years we're still thinking like that. We thought something had improved. I mean, bring Solskjaer back at this point, I don't care.
Yeah, you got a lot of stick online back then, didn't you, to be fair? Before we wrap it up, a couple of questions. No, to be fair, no, you didn't. But I know exactly who did it, and I won't get you started on who did it, because you'll be here for another hour. Every time I go on Twitter, one of your tweets has gone viral because you've been criticising a certain someone. But again, we won't go into it. Before we wrap it up, mate, are you aware of any sort of away pubs that fans can go to? Obviously, I'm going on Saturday, and I actually work at Media City, which isn't far from Old Trafford. I can see the ground from my from my office. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to park in Media City. I'm going to go to that Salmon of Knowledge downstairs. It's just changed its name. So I'm going to go there.
Yeah.
So any other ones that you can recommend for fans?
Do you know what? In terms of away pubs, I don't know. With Burnley kind of not being a big rival of United, you'd probably be all right with most places.
Yeah.
Salmon and Knowledge is brand new. Looks like I've been to the one in Manchester and it's very good. It looks like it's very good at Media City.
Yeah, it is. The pint of Guinness.
I think Media City, Salford Keys will most likely be Man United fans everywhere. Well, that's just part and parcel of it being a home game round Old Trafford. To be honestly, I don't know. I've never really thought of where away fans go. You're probably looking at some pubs in Manchester, in town, but
and then travelling over.
You'd be fine with Media City, to be fair.
Like I said, I worked there. After work the other day, I went down, had a Guinness, asked the guy behind the bar, I said, well, how do you feel about away fans? He said, why? Which team do you support? I said, Burnley. And obviously, it's your next home game. He said, Burnley will be fine. Just don't wearing colours, but even as Burnley, you probably won't be that bothered. And I do recommend it. It's a very nice Guinness, to be fair.
Yeah, it is good in there. I mean, I think if you were a Liverpool fan rocking up in there, I think you'd be swiftly kicked out. And I don't mean by the bouncers. But yeah, Burnley should be fine. I think most pubs would be fairly welcoming around there. I probably just wouldn't. Maybe not the Tollgate, maybe not the Bishop, just because it's so Man United in there. It's all just loud United chants and stuff. It just probably wouldn't be the vibe of an away fan, I suppose. Same with hotel football. The Railway Club, I probably wouldn't bother with either. But Media City, you should be fine.
Yeah, fair enough. And one last one from me before we wrap it up. Do you want to let everyone know where they can find you and your content if they want to digest any sort of like pre-game content from the Man United end?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on Twitter, to be honest. I mean, obviously the UnitedRoad.com is where I write blogs, but to be honest, it's on a little bit of a hiatus, mainly because I've just not written for ages, because last year was very hard to want to write about Man United. So yeah, I mean, for now, just any updates you want from me, catch them on my Twitter at _Callum Stone. You'll see them on there, and catch any updates for when I do start writing again. I'm hoping for it to be soon, to be fair, because there is kind of plenty to write about. It's just having the motivation to want to write about them. So yeah, my Twitter is probably the best place to catch me on at the moment, and any updates there you can find.
Yeah, well, definitely do recommend that if anyone wants to go and check it out. But Callum, thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure, and I'll probably speak to you in 6 months or whatever it is when we play at Turf Moor.
Yeah, I shall look forward to it.
Nice one, mate. Cheers.
Cheers.